Hello friends, I'm Rob, this is Digital Wastrel, and welcome to my introduction to making a Necromunda Genestealer Cults gang. Let's go! Welcome to the video. This is a guide to running Genestealer Cults in Necromunda. It aims to cover pretty much everything you need to know to get started. It's mostly aimed at beginners, but hopefully players that have been around for a while might find something interesting in this guide as well. So this video is going to start with an overview of the gang. I'll talk a little bit about the strengths, weaknesses, and any special mechanics that the gang has. And then we'll do the same for weapons and wargear. Talking about some strong choices, some not so strong choices, and any kind of unique things that the gang gets access to. Then we're going to have a look at some of the skill choices and some skill suggestions. And then we'll go a little bit in depth for building a roster, like your starting list, with some general advice, some of my ideas about how to equip each of the different fighter types. And then we're also going to give some suggestions for what to do after your first few games. So kind of ways to build your gang out and some kind of general principles to keep in mind. Then we're going to have a look at some hobby tips and, you know, how to physically build the gang, stuff like that. And then finally, I'm going to round off the video with 4 example starting gang lists. So it's one box, what you see is what you get, built from a single box. Same, but from 3 different boxes. Then I'm going to do like a Kellamorph themed gang, and then my own personal starting gang, which is the roster that I would play if I was going to start a campaign with these guys. So let's get straight in. What are the strengths of a Genestealer Cult gang? Well, they're kind of a sneaky, fighty, shooty gang. They can do a little bit of everything. They've got some infiltration and they've got some tricksy skills with the cunning skill tree. They've got some quite nice guns. They've got access to long las and grenade launchers, which are all very nice. And they've also got some heavy weapons in the form of the mining laser and, of course, the heavy stubber. They can do shooty, and then aberrants mean that they've got some very nasty close combat options as well. But they don't have much in the way of resilience. If the enemy hits you, you don't have much trickery to get away from that. So I'm going to describe them as a bit of a glass cannon gang. Another strength is that you get very good value basic gangers. They're relatively cheap. They're not like super cheap in terms of like Cawdor, but each ganger comes with a hazard suit built into the cost, and they have really good stats for the price as well. So yeah, good value basic gangers. Not just the basic gangers, but a lot of your gang comes free with hazard suits. So hazard suits give you a 6-up save and also make you immune to rad weapons, which you'll probably never use, and flame weapons or blaze weapons, which you will definitely appreciate at some point. Next up, Genestealer Cults give you 2 very different choices for gang leader. So you have the Cults Alpha, which is kind of the fighty leader type, multiple arms and multiple weapons and multiple guns. And then your second choice is the Magus, or the Adept, it's called in this, which is basically your kind of your mastermind, lead from the shadows, psychic leader. So both of those are really cool. Mentioned a little bit previously, but you have really good skill selection. 2 of the best skill trees in the game, which are, of course, Cunning and Ferocity. Next up, you get slightly cheaper hand flamers. Costs you 50 credits for a hand flamer instead of 75, which is pretty nice. Hand flamers are not the best template weapon in the game, but for 50 credits, you can't complain. Also, being an older gang, their gang list came out before the House of books, so the wording and the way that the gang is organized is a little bit janky compared to the newer ones. But an advantage this gives you is that everyone in the gang can use trading post weapons. So the house gangs, your basic gangers, are restricted to only what's on their particular weapons list. But yeah, you can kit out your entire Genestealer cult with combat shotguns or bolt guns or whatever, assuming you have enough credits and you can find them. Yeah, so that's pretty nice. And also more jankiness. Every ganger you recruit after the first game can be a specialist. I don't think that's super abusable. Your basic gangers are incredibly slow. You only have a movement of 4, so it's not super abusable. But yeah, you can get loads of grenade launchers and other nasty special weapons if you want. Yeah, another thing is that you have some extra arms. Oh, no, sorry, that was a mistake. Let me just delete that. Yeah, Genestealer Cults come with the correct human number of arms, so don't worry about that. Yeah, next up they get access to weird powers, which are really cool. So, yeah, psychic powers from the Book of the Outcast, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, psychic characters are always cool. You also get psychic familiars, which is your exotic beast, and they're little psychic monster things that follow your characters around and give you incredibly nasty bonuses. Mentioned aberrants before, but they're basic gangers, but they're kind of stat-wise, they like mini champions. They got 2 attacks each, 2 wounds, really good strength and toughness. Yeah, they're pretty nasty, and they will destroy anything that you get them into close combat with. And then finally, you've got like the entire 40k range to build your gang from. Yeah, most house gangs have got, you know, the 2 or 3 boxes and then maybe some Forge World characters. But yeah, you've got a whole range of plastics, and that's really good. Next up, what are some weaknesses? So the basic champions that you have access to have 1 wound and 1 attack, which is awful. Yeah, I think most people would agree the champions are probably the weakest part of Genestealer Cults. Yeah, it's definitely awful. I mentioned before that aberrants are really good and they have champion stats, but they are very specifically not champions, which means no post-game actions, no group activation, and most problematic because they're just basic gangers. You have to roll random XP upgrades. You can't kind of choose which stats you buy for them. So yeah, aberrants are good, but they're not champions. So yeah, that's a big downside to the gang. Again, they're a non-house gang, so they haven't got as much love as the house gangs. They kind of feel like an expansion gang. You know, they've been done and they've been put out, and they're probably not going to get looked at again, which, you know, could be a positive, could be a negative, depending on whether you like new things showing up for your gang or not. Yeah, also, there's no unique hangers-on, no unique skills, and no unique brute available, which is pretty sad. There would have been loads of opportunity to add these kind of characters because the Genestealer Cult range has got so many cool models in it. But sadly, you get your basic dudes, and that's about it. Yeah, the third arm rule is worded kind of weirdly. I've had a look online and tried to get some kind of consensus, but yeah, there's arguments to be made kind of both ways as to how the third arm rule works. And then on top of that, the alpha's third arm is better than everybody else's. So yeah, it's not an easy rule to understand the first time you read it. Also, for some reason, they have a higher threshold for extra hangers-on than other gangs. I think most gangs need 6 rep to gain hangers-on, but Genestealer Cults need 10 to get their second. Also, you're going to be paying more credits to visit the doctor, to yeah, take any injured fighters to the doctor. because you need to pay them hush money so they don't turn you in to the authorities. Yeah, next up, I mentioned that there's 2 different types of leader, and they're both really cool, but because they're your leader, you can only take one of them, so whichever one you pick, you won't get access to the other guy, which is pretty bad. Yeah, next, the biggest sin of the Genestealer Cults, they don't get access to stub guns. Stub guns are great, I love stub guns, my favourite gun in the game, but you don't get them, so, you know, bad times. And yeah, I touched on this a little bit before, but most of your gang has got movement of 4, which is like Goliath and Van Sar movement. And yeah, it makes moving around the map kind of difficult. So yeah, that's the downside to the gang. And then special mechanics available to Genestealer Cults. So yeah, mostly it's the 3rd arm thing. So if you have 3 arms, it basically it allows you to shoot a heavy weapon as a basic action. So it works in the same way as suspensors, which is very good. 3rd arm is cheaper than suspensors, so yeah, you get cheaper move and shoot heavy weapons, which is very nice. But if you don't have a heavy weapon, it gives you a 3rd arm, gives you an extra attack. Plus you can carry 4 weapons instead of 3, and the extra attack that you get in your profile gains rending, which is very confusing. Yeah, I guess you have to make a note of which arm has the rending arm, if it has a weapon in it. It's very janky. And then the alpha gets an additional rule for their 3rd arm. So yeah, they get all of the above, but they get the opportunity to use 3 melee weapons or 3 sidearm weapons. And again, it's not really explained how this works. The assumption is that, yeah, I guess if you have 3 sidearm weapons, then you can do twin guns blazing, but, you know, triple guns blazing, and you can fire all 3 of them. The assumption is if you have 3 melee weapons, then maybe that'll give you an extra +1 for having 3, like +1 for 2 and then +1 for 3. But it's not clear, so yeah, be prepared to talk over how that works with your opponent before you get into it. And also, you cannot buy a 3rd arm mid-campaign. You know, you're born with the arm. You cannot upgrade middle of the game, middle of the campaign. Genestealer Cults also get special rules for playing in Dominion campaigns, which is the basic Necromunda campaign type. So for territory boons, they basically count as Orlocks, so any Orlock bonuses they would get, which is kind of mining, you know, fits both of them, thematic. If you get a mine territory, you can put your own gangers to work in the mines, so, you know, everyone working for the greater good, I suppose. Yeah, you also are never able to hold the Guilder Contact territory. Yeah, it just straight up doesn't work for you. On a plus side, settlements generate neophytes instead of Juves. You don't get the Juve type, you just have basic gangers, so your settlements will get you more gangers, which is a positive. And finally, you cannot sell captured enemies to the guilders. You can execute them or ransom them back to the gang they came from if you want to, but yeah, you can't sell them for credits. And then we're not going to cover this in this particular video, but there is also the option to run a Genestealer infected house gang. So the way this works is that you take the basic house gang and then you kind of put the Genestealer infected template on top of it. So yeah, I'm not going to cover that in detail in this video, but just a quick description of how it works. So any house gang can become infected either mid-campaign or at gang creation. And if they choose to do so, their leader can be upgraded to a Psyker, which is very nice. They can also recruit 1 Aberrant, and they get access to purchasing a cult icon and the possibility of hybrid Jews who come with 3 arms. So all of those are really nice. Yeah, I recently did a video about my Vansar gang, and I'm actually using the rules for Genestealer Infected gang. I'm using a lot of counts as, so I've got a robot thing instead of an aberrant, and I've got like time travel powers because of the Psyker upgrade. So if you want to check that out, I'll put a link on the screen and you can click on that and have a look at it. But for now, let's move on. So weapons and war gear. Yeah, what should you give to your fellas? So some strong choices. Yeah, auto guns, las guns, and shotguns are your basic weapon options. Unlike some of the other gangs, you don't get any discounts, so it's nothing special. These are just the 3 basic weapons that pretty much everyone gets access to. All of them are fine. Yeah, you can equip them with whichever one you prefer, but statistically, las guns are probably the best choice. The reason for this is because they have a better, a longer short range, which means that you have a better bonuses to hit, which is nice, and you can also buy them the hotshot las gun packs, which boost them up to strength 4, so they have some upgrade potential. But if you prefer the look of auto guns, or if all of your miniatures are equipped with auto guns, then they're fine. It's not a big deal. Yeah, you don't get stub guns, which is very sad, and you also don't get access to reclaimed auto pistols, so that's really kind of bad for the gang. So you don't, basically that means you don't get access to any like cheap pistols or any cheap weapons. All of your guns are like 10 or 15 credits at the cheapest. But for backup weapons, las pistols are probably the best choice. Again, very similar to the reasoning behind las guns. Las pistols have got the superior short range, and that means you'll hit with them more often, which is what you want to do. Yeah, 50 credit hand flamers are great. The most obvious use for them is to stick them on an infiltrate champion and, you know, set people on fire. But they are 50 credits is kind of cheap enough to spread them around in your gang a little bit if you want to. Grenade launchers are great in other gangs. They're just great all around, but they are even better here because you have access to the Overwatch skill. But please note that you do not have access to smoke ammo from your house list. You can buy smoke ammo, but you'll have to go to the trading post to do so. Another special weapon that you have is the long las. So long las and long rifle are different things. Long las is not quite as good as the long rifle, but it's still a really good buy for 20 credits. It's strength 4, it's got good range. Yeah, it's a good choice for a cheap long range gun. As I mentioned previously, you can get neophytes after your first game. They can all come in as specialists if you want. So it would be possible to just buy loads of neophytes with long lases. That would be very strong if you're into that sort of thing. But you're not that kind of person. You know, we play Necromunda here. We're in it for the narrative. We're in it for setting each other on fire and rolling dice to see if you go insane. You know, you don't spam. You can spam if you want to. You know, I ain't judging you. You do what you want. Next up, web guns. Yeah, web guns are amazing as always. Best paired with infiltrate if you have too many friends and you want to upset them and make them not want to be friends with you anymore. Heavy stubbers are a Necromunda classic, but I would take a mining laser if you want a heavy weapon, especially with 3 arms. So mining lasers are very good strength, very good AP, very good damage, very good ammo roll as well. They've got like a 3-up ammo roll, so you can easily reload if you need to. But they've got a very short range. However, 3 arms means you can move and shoot. So yeah, mining lasers are a great choice in this gang. Chainswords and power weapons are probably the best close combat choice. I especially like buying a power pick for an aberrant. We'll talk about aberrants a little bit later, but power pick gives them enough strength to knock them over into strength 6, which means that they will be wounding toughness 3 and opponents on 2s, which is very nice. Hazard suits are great for free on a lot of your gang members. If you're fighting Cawdor, yeah, anyone who's trying to use Blaze against you, you'll absolutely love having a hazard suit. Note that you will still take the strength hit, and you will still, take damage from that, but you will be immune to the Blaze condition, which will be great for you and less great for anyone trying to set you on fire. Alright, next up, narrative choices. Yeah, so if you've seen any of my previous tactics videos, you'll know what this is about. But just to restate, narrative choices is the name that I've chosen for this section. It's not bad choices, it's not, suboptimal or inefficient choices. I went with narrative choices because this is kind of these are the weapons that you take because you like the flavor of it, or you like, the look of it, or you just think it seems cool. So yeah, judging this, you can kind of balance between taking some narrative choices, some strong choices, and then hopefully you'll have a gang that looks cool and is fun, while also having some options that will help you not get steamrolled every mission. So yeah, having said all of that, there are very few completely awful choices. Yeah, the only real big dud on the Genestealer Cult list is probably the two-handed hammers, and the reason why you should stay away from them is because they're -1 to hit. Yeah, it's absolutely imperative that you hit people with your weapons, so having a penalty is not very good at all. Yeah, seismic cannons are another heavy weapon option that you have access to. I think they're too confused as to what they want to be doing. Basically, they have two different firing modes, like short range and long range, and each range band kind of punishes you for using the wrong one, which makes them very tricky to use. They might be more usable with 3 arms than they are for kind of general people. Like move and shoot makes them a little bit easier, but even so, even if you can get them in the correct range band, I think the stats are still not really good enough for how tricky they are to get you to use, and they're on top of that they're really expensive. So I don't rate the seismic cannon, sadly. And the heavy rock weapons, so you get a choice of 3 heavy rock weapons: the drill, the saw, and the snips, whatever they're called. Yeah, and all 3 of them are really big, beefy mining tools that you can use to chop people up. But sadly, they're just way too expensive. They're very, very good, and if you do take one and get them into close combat, then they will murder whoever you attack with them. But they're just so expensive, and especially on a gang like yours where you just don't have the movement really to reliably get them in. Yeah, giving them to an aberrant is overkill because they've got the stats to be a blender with cheaper weapons, and if you put them on an infiltrating champion, those guys have only got 1 attack. So yeah, sad because they look cool, but they're probably not worth it. Regular flamers and needle pistols are both basically fine, but I put them under the category of too expensive to be worth it. So yeah, those are my opinions for weapons to be wary of. And then unique choices. So this is usually where I talk about what weapons are unique to the gang, but yeah, Genestealer Cults don't get any unique weapons to themselves. Sorry about that. So instead, let's talk about the Psychic Familiar. So this is actually a exotic beast, but it feels like it's basically a piece of Wargear, so I'm going to talk about it here. Yeah, it's great. The way it works is the master, the owner of the Psychic Familiar, can make a willpower check once per turn to ignore a successful hit, and that is including templates. You just roll, and if you make it, you just don't get hit. Yeah, again, janky word rulings. Is it once per activation or once per game turn? Yeah, you should play it as game turn, because if it's once per activation, it's basically broken. Still really good though. Yeah, if you have an opinion about how that's meant to be played, let me know down below. And And then the familiar itself, if you manage to get some shots on that, has a 3-up invulnerable save, so no AP, it just, does some ninja dodging. And then also a 4-up template dodge to, again, just avoid any templates that happen to hit it. That being said, if you do manage to hit it with a weapon, it is only toughness 2 and 1 wound, so it should die if it gets hit. But if you're fighting against a Genestealer Cult gang, it's probably not worth attacking the familiar. The amount of firepower you've got to put into it to take it out, to get through those invulnerable saves. The Genestealer Cult player can just pay 25 credits and buy another one if you do manage to kill it. So yeah, they're very annoying. Yeah, good luck. So yeah, in the Wargear section it says you can have 0 to 3 familiars. Again, some more potentially janky wording. Is that 0 to 3 per gang or per character? I would suggest 1 familiar per gang is probably enough. You could put 1 on each character, which would make your guys very, very strong and annoying to deal with. Which, maybe that's the balance for only having 1 wound. But it feels like a bit of a feels bad moment if you spam familiars. So yeah, what I'm saying is that the rules are potentially abusable. They're not worded completely clearly. So have a good old chat with your fellow players before, shelling out for 3 of these. Next up, psychic powers. If you take an adept for your leader, they are psychic. Yeah, the question is, can your adept take the Book of the Outcast's psychic powers at gang creation, or do they have to take one of their trashy cult powers first, and then maybe take a Book of the Outcast power later with XP? All signs point to yes, it's fine. But again, clear it with your fellow players before rocking up with whatever nasty power you're eyeing up. Yeah, lots of janky wordings here, so yeah, just be aware that it's that kind of gang, and if there's something that's a bit ambiguous, talk to people before committing to it. Right, on to the next section. Let's talk about skills. If you take an adept, you have access to cunning, leadership, and weird powers. If you take an alpha, you get access to combat, shooting, and leadership powers. And if you take an acolyte, which is your champion, they get access to cunning and ferocity. Cunning and ferocity being 2 of the best skill sets, so that's pretty good. Let's have a look at the cult adept. So yeah, as mentioned in the previous image, they get cunning, leadership, and weird. However, weird powers count as a skill, count as a starting skill, so you basically don't want to take any regular skills. Yeah, you'll basically take your psychic power here, because yeah, this counts as your free skill, so it's a waste of the entire character if you buy him and then give him a skill instead of psychic powers. There are loads of great psychic powers in the Book of the Outcast. I could and perhaps will do an entire video on the psychic powers available and different uses for them. But here are some of my favourites. Warp Whispers, which is in the divination tree. It's a nice, interesting passive one. Basically, it means if you have this power, then you can bring an extra fighter to the battle. Maybe not a great one to start with, but it is a really cool one. And, anything that gets extra bodies on the board for the game is really, really strong. Wall of Flame, which is a pyromancy one, is really good for controlling the board. This one puts down a blast marker and it stays there for the rest of the turn, so you can kind of use it to block off things with big old flame walls, which is pretty cool. I haven't used it myself, but a lot of people are really really big on Weapon Jinx, which is from the Technomancy set. This is really good against big gun gangs like Vansar or Orlok. Basically, you target an enemy and they immediately have to make an ammo check or potentially immediately go out of ammo, which is pretty nice for people who love plasma guns. My personal favourite discipline is telepathy, and I think that's also really narrative. Telepathy is kind of fits in with the Cult Magus story, I think. Hallucinations, Terrify, and Mind Control are all very strong choices and also very fun to use for you anyway. And yeah, don't forget that you'll get the Discipline special ability as long as all of your powers come from the same set. So yeah, choose a discipline, take only powers from that discipline, and you'll get a cool little extra special ability on top of your regular psychic powers. Next up, Cult Alpha. So yeah, this is your fighty, shooty, gunslingery, three-armed leader. Overseer is a possibility, and you do have a lot of good targets for it. You can use it with a heavy weapon champion to get multiple shots, or you can also do something like slingshot, a web gun, or hand flame at someone. But I don't think it's great to play against Overseer. It turns it into kind of a very one-dimensional game, and it also is a bit of a waste of the alpha. Like, the alpha is really good, and just using the alpha as a Overseer feels like a bit of a waste, so I would not recommend that. In terms of leadership stats, your gang has very good cool stats, so something like Iron Will or anything like that isn't super useful in my opinion. Like, you won't be bottling out that much, yeah, because you have the cult fever, so you know everyone's really devoted to the cause, so they're not going to be running that easily. Combat skill tree is all a bit underwhelming. There are a few which might be fun, but none of them really jump out at me. Which means that, yeah, the shooting skill tree is probably the best choice. Yeah, gunfighter, fast shot, or hip shooting are probably the best choices for a gunslinging Kellamorph. So yeah, that's the three-armed, three-pistol leader guy that you can make. Gunfighter means that you can fire all of your pistols at different targets and without taking a penalty, which is obviously very good. Fast shot means that if you don't move, you can fire twice because it makes shooting a simple action instead of a basic action. So you have 3 arms, you have 3 pistols. If you take fast shot and you start your activation in range, then you can shoot each pistol twice, so 6 shots, which is very nice, especially if you have multiple, you know, plasma pistols or something like that. And then finally, hip shooting is a very good one because that means you can do a double move and shoot. Yeah, so you can get up close and pew pew with your pistols. So yeah, I think you'll probably want all 3 of those skills eventually. For me, I would probably start with hip shooting because being able to move and shoot is really strong at the start. It just gives you a lot of options and means you'll be able to react to a lot of situations. But yeah, your mileage may vary. Yeah, take whichever one you think is the most useful for you. And then your acolyte. So there are a few different ways you can build this character. Yeah, your champions can take infiltrate. Obviously, you can get sneaky and you can drop some templates on someone turn 1. Web gun or hand flamer are the 2 obvious choices. Yeah, infiltrate is also quite nice for maybe having a long range gun and, you know, deploying somewhere where you can see, easily see a lot of people, you know, like sticking them on top of a tower or somewhere, get some firing lanes down. Or just use it to, you know, grab loot or whatever. Infiltrate's quite a nice one. Overwatch is very nice as well. Overwatch you can pair with a grenade launcher to kind of lock down an area of the board or any big gun. Yeah, I have used Overwatch on a mining laser champion before and I can confirm it was very satisfying. We've also got Nerves of Steel from the Ferocity tree. So Nerves of Steel means that if you get shot, you can make a cool check, and if you succeed, then you are not pinned. So yeah, this is probably the best choice for any big gun champion. Even with 3 arms, you basically want to avoid being pinned. Yeah, not a lot of choices, but they are all very strong. Right, general roster advice. Starting gang roster tips. So these are my kind of general ideas and principles for things you should keep in mind when you're making a gang roster. The first one, I said it before, I will say it again, boys before toys. More bodies will usually be better than a fully tricked out gang. One of the big traps that I see newer players fall into sometimes is they take a small number of characters and they buy them loads and loads of war gear and guns. And the problem with that is that one or two unlucky rolls, and then that character goes down, and then you're bottling, and then it doesn't matter how much war gear you've got if your guys are running away. I would suggest for Genestealer Cults to aim for about 8 bodies minimum. Yeah, even if it means just bringing guys with a las pistol. More elite gangs are possible, but it's a gamble. So if you have a bad game and end up with loads of fighters in recovery or dead, and then you don't have that many fighters in your whole roster, then you'll go into your next game weaker, and then you'll possibly get into a death spiral. Yeah, so at the start, you can always buy toys later on. You can always upgrade as the campaign goes on. But yeah, start with more bodies over anything else. Yeah, I would say don't waste credits on armor. So unlike most other gangs, most of your fighters will come with hazard suits. Yeah, mentioned before, but hazard suits give you a 6-up save, which is fine. And they also make you immune to rad weapons and blaze effects. Sorry, rad effects and blaze effects. You still take the damage from the gun, you just don't take the status effect. Yeah, consider the role of the fighter and if they need to spend the extra credits for mesh or if hazard suits are enough. Yeah, basically, even though hazard suits are not great, you can save a lot of credits by not upgrading. Also, double check which fighters do not start with hazard suits. There are a couple. Acolytes and Aberrants, I believe, don't start with any armor. So, yeah, don't accidentally send your fighters into battle nude, unless they're into that. If you fight a lot of blaze users, if you're primarily fighting against corridor gangs, then yeah, hazard suits might actually be the best choice overall. Yeah. Next up, figure out what role you want your leader and your champions to play, and then equip them with that in mind. One of the trickiest things in Necromunda, I think, is figuring out what kind of job you want your leaders and your champions to do. And then following on from that a little bit is figure out how many aberrants you want, if any. So you can go full aberrant, and well, not full aberrant, but you can go heavy aberrant, or you can go 0 aberrant. They are a type of ganger, so you can choose to take them, or you can take a lot of them. They are very nice, but they do get expensive fast. If you want like 2 or 3 or 4 of them, it's going to be most of your gang. So you'll need to have some cheap champions and leaders. Yeah, so after you've done all that, fill up the rest of your list with fighters to support. So that's cheap guys with las guns, basically. Yeah, so those are the principles to keep in mind when you start making your list. Right, let's have a look at some specific loadouts. Adept loadouts. This is your psychic leader option. Psychic powers are really good, so that should be his main focus. Don't waste too many credits on gear that he won't use. It is possible to give him guns and close combat weapons and stuff, and it's probably not a bad idea to give him something. But most of the time, you're probably going to be wanting to move closer to get in range with your psychic powers or using your psychic powers. So yeah, don't spend loads of credits on a really big gun and then never use it. So this guide assumes that you do have access to the Book of the Outcast powers. I personally think Genestealer Cults should get access to them because the Games Workshop FAQ specifically calls out Delac gangs as not having access to them at the start, but it says nothing about any other psychers. And if the Genestealer Cult and Chaos Cult gangs, if their psychic options did not get access to the Book of the Outcast powers, it would mean that it would be very difficult to use the Book of the Outcast powers. They would only really be on, like hired guns or stuff, which seems like a waste. So yeah, in my opinion, they definitely should get access to the Book of the Outcast powers. But I am not playing with you, probably. Yeah, so check with your arbitrator, check with the people you're playing with. That's how you should play. Check what's going on with the people you're playing with. Yeah, he's one of the characters that does not come with a hazard suit, so don't forget to give him some armor under those robes. Stat-wise, he's got a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 4 and 2 attacks. So this is not great, but not awful. Personally, I like to give him a chainsword because it gives you a +1 to hit and it gives you the parry skill if you do end up in close combat. So yeah, basically you don't want to be in close combat, but if you do get charged, a chainsword might keep you alive a little bit longer. And now let's have a look at some possible loadouts. First up, we've got the all-rounder psychic loadout. So this is mesh armor, las pistol, maybe a chainsword. You can probably send him into battle with just mesh armor for the first game if you need to save some credits. Yeah, keep him cheap. And this loadout will work with pretty much any power you like the look of. It's kind of an all-rounder. Yeah, keep him cheap, use psychic powers. Another idea that I had is the Pyromaniac loadout. So this is you buy him mesh armor, a hand flamer, and take the wall of flame power. The idea is you move up and then you activate the flame wall, and then in subsequent phases you can keep it maintained because it's a continuous power. So keeping it maintained is one activation, then you have a spare activation for hand flaming anyone who gets too close. This is assuming that someone moves up and then stands in front of you and then lets you stay alive long enough to set them on fire with a hand flamer. So yeah, basically this is a bad loadout because you don't have enough actions to move and shoot with the hand flamer, but you can set multiple people on fire with 2 different flame attacks. And that's the reason I wrote it down. Don't take it, but it's funny. Next, here's another idea. Psychic Brawler loadout. So you take mesh, you take 2 chainswords, and then you take the quickening power. So the quickening gives you +3 to move, I think, and then bonus +1 to your weapon skill and ballistic skill. So you can use your power to charge in, and then you hit with 4 attacks with rending, and you're hitting on 2s. So that's weapon skill 4, +1 to hit because of the chainsword, and then +1 to hit because of the quickening. Yeah, it's a bit of a gimmick, thing. But if you want like a psychic swordsman, then that might be quite fun to do. And then finally, here is a psychic sniper loadout idea. So we got mesh, long las, and then the Zen shootist power. Zen shootist power lets you hit on a ballistic skill roll of a 2-up, and it also ignores any modifiers and any cover that the enemy happens to be in, which is pretty cool. But it doesn't work with blast weapons or rapid fire weapons, which means the only real option you've got is the long las, which is fine. That's a good gun. It's a continuous power, so you won't be able to move and shoot while it's up. So you want to move into position and then and then cast it and then long las people. Yeah, I don't know if that's a great use of your psychic sniper, because if you want a shooty leader, you should probably choose our next option, which is the Alpha. This is your fighty leader option. He mostly seems designed for multi-pistol shooting action, which is the Kellamorph. I'm sure you're familiar with the Kellamorph. The Kellamorph is the really cool Genestealer Cults miniature guy with the 3 pistols and the cool cape. So yeah, you can use that guy as your leader. But you can equip him with a variety of things. So he comes standard with with a 3rd arm. This arm is slightly different to everyone else's, which I mentioned before, because it lets you shoot with 3 sidearm / melee weapons at once. So the melee loadout wording is a little bit confusing. Yeah, you get +1 attack on your profile because you have a 3rd arm. Do you get an extra +2 attacks if you hold 3 melee weapons? Like +1 for having 2 weapons that's how the rules work. But if you have 3 melee weapons, does that give you +2? Yeah, so for the purposes of this thought exercise, let's assume so. But if you're going to actually try it out, again, check with your arbitrator. A better loadout is probably going with the kind of Kellamorph setup. So this lets you shoot with 3 sidearm weapons. Please note, though, that hand flamers do not have the sidearm trait, so you cannot shoot 3 hand flamers, sadly. Other than that, pistol choices on your house list are needle pistols, which are probably too expensive, especially if you're buying 3 of them. Las or auto pistols are your best bet from your house list. Now, rules as written, Necromunda says that you are not allowed to throw away your weapons and buy new ones. You do not have the ability to discard weapons. However, many groups house rule that, so you are able to throw away your weapons and buy better ones later on. So if your group does play with that house rule, then you should definitely upgrade to 3 plasma pistols or something equally nasty later on. If you are stuck with the weapons from your house list, I would probably go with las pistols over auto pistols. Yeah, because then you can upgrade them with the old hotshot packs. So here are 2 different loadout ideas for you. 3 armed swordsman loadout. So yeah, again, this loadout is assuming that you get an extra attack for having 3 close combat weapons. So you take mesh armor, you take 3 chainswords, and then assuming the assumptions that I've already assumed, then you will get 6 attacks on the charge. You'll be hitting on 2s. You'll be strength 4. You'll be -1 AP, and you will have rending. That is not bad at all. Combat skills are not so good. Maybe you could take Step Aside or Combat Master. This kind of loadout will murder a lot of stuff if you get the charge. It's not quite the levels of something like a Death Maiden or a Nacht Ghoul, but yeah, you'll definitely kill people with 3 chainswords. Another option though, because you have access to 4 weapon slots, is you could take hip shooting, and then you could take something like a web gun for your 4th weapon, and then do move, shoot, which would make you a real, if expensive, terror. And then the Kellamorph loadout, which I think most people will be looking at. You can take mesh, you can take 3 las pistols. So las pistols get the better short range over auto pistols, and they can be upgraded with hotshot packs. Hip shooting, gunfighter, and fast shot are all great skills that you will want eventually, but I would personally start with hip shooting so you can keep him mobile. If your arbitrator and your gaming group allows it, pick up some plasma pistols when you can. So these 2 are dedicated, all melee or all pistols, but you can of course do a mix. You can do a little bit of shooting and a little bit of fighting as well. Yeah, you've got a lot of options, just, go nuts. Next up, champion. So you only have 1 choice for champion, the hybrid acolyte. You have movement 4, you have 1 attack and 1 wound, which is an awful stat block. It's really bad. They do get access to 2 of the best skill sets though, cunning and ferocity. Think about the extra arm upgrade to be essentially a discounted version of the suspensors, which allows you to move and shoot with unwieldy weapons, which is very good. They are very fragile, so personally I would keep them out of close combat if possible. I think they're better used as shooty champions. So here are some ideas for loadouts. Sniper loadout, so you can take mesh, long las or a grenade launcher, and then Overwatch. Keep this guy cheap and make the enemy keep their heads down. This is very good as like a support one if you're taking lots of aberrants, because aberrants get expensive and this guy can be relatively cheap. Next up, heavy weapons guy loadout. Mesh, mining laser, and a 3rd arm. Take Nerves of Steel, Overwatch, or Infiltrate. Yeah, walk around and shoot people with a big laser. It's great. And then finally, they're coming out of the walls loadout. In this one, you take mesh and then a hand flamer or maybe a web gun and then infiltrate skill. You deploy up close and you hope that you can template them before they get you. The web gun is the fully superior choice, but hand flamers are a lot cheaper. So see how many credits you got kicking around to see which choice you should go for. Next up, ganger loadout ideas. Neophytes are the name of your basic gangers. They're movement 4, which is bad, but they have good willpower and good cool, and they come free with a hazard suit, so they are good value. Give them las guns and that's it. That's all you need. 1 can be a specialist at gang creation, and the grenade launcher is the best choice. Long las is also good and cheap. they're too slow to make use of template weapons like flamers and webs. Aberrants are another ganger choice that you have access to. They have champion stats. They have weapon skill 3+, strength 5, toughness 4, 2 wounds and 2 attacks, which is a stat block to make a Goliath envious. They do not get a choice of a skill at the start, but they do, I think, come with Unstoppable, which is not bad. They don't get any after-battle actions, and they have random level ups until they become a specialist, and they also cannot take the 3rd arm upgrade. If the model has 3 arms, it is assumed that the 3rd arm is already part of their stats, so yeah, they just don't take those as an upgrade. Buy the mesh armor and buy them a close combat weapon. Giving them 2 fighting knives are a relatively cheap way of equipping them, and they will get the job done. Fighting knives on a lot of people are underwhelming and feel like a backup option, but with your basic stats and the -1 AP from fighting knives, you should shred most people. You can also go with 2 chainswords, which will let you hit on 2s, which is obviously very nice. Mentioned before, but heavy rock weapons are way too expensive, sadly. Power picks are expensive, but they do take you up to strength 6, so you'll be wounding most enemies on 2s, plus you get huge AP, pulverize, and all the usual power weapon benefits. But you are spending like 40 credits on a power pick, but if you got the credits, it should be pretty nasty. Right, on to the brutes, beasts, and hangers-on. No unique brutes or hangers-on, sadly. Genestealer Cults start technically as law-abiding, so they can recruit Ambots and Ogryn as usual. Ambots are great. Ogryn might be quite fun if you want to use the Abominant mini. Yeah, if you want to use like the big old mutant guy on a 40mm base, then you could do a bit of a proxy, count him as an Ogryn maybe. We covered Psychic Familiars earlier in the video, but to recap, they are great/broken. They give their master a very good chance of avoiding pretty much 1 attack per turn. Technically, you can take 0 to 3 in the gang roster, but taking too many will not earn you very many friends. In terms of general hangers-on, rogue docs are probably the best hanger-on to get first, because you're paying more than usual for your doc's visits. So buy a rogue doc and, you know, have a house doctor who doesn't need hush money. Right, what to aim for after your first few games. First up, get more bodies. Try and expand until you have around 10 to 12 strong gang. Basically, your goal is to give yourself enough bodies to survive a bad game and still be able to go into the next one with a strong roster. So yeah, keep buying guys until you've got like 10 to 12 members, and then you should be able to tank like a really disastrous game without losing, you know, going into a death spiral. Next up, try upgrading your gangers. Take hot shot packs for your las guns. Sprinkling in some shotguns might be nice for some more close range punch. Get some special weapons. Talked about this earlier in the video a few times, but the janky gang creation rules work in your favor here. Any neophytes you recruit during the campaign can be armed with special weapons, so get another grenade launcher, you're worth it. Visit the trading posts. More older gang jank here, as neophytes and aberrants have restricted weapon types, but no restrictions to stick with the cult equipment list. So yeah, buy some chain axes for your aberrants and maybe get some bolt guns or something for your neophytes. Yeah, just said, but rogue docs are a good buy early on to save you credits. You need to pay extra hush money if you go to the regular doctors, so rogue docs are good for that. After that, you're probably at a stage where you can afford to spend money on luxuries, like brutes, more champions, you know, expensive guns, stuff like that. That said, all of this is not a completely exhaustive list. There are probably some options I've missed, and if you don't like the sound of any of this, don't do it. You know, don't do the boring option because some guy on the internet told you to. You know, most important thing is to have fun. So if you're having fun, that's good. Right, hobby tips. So, stuff to know about building a Genestealer Cults gang. So usually in this section I talk about how to customize your gang, what's on the sprue, etc, etc. But Genestealer Cults have a whole 40k range to pick from, and it's all easy to kit bash. I'm pretty sure that every Genestealer Cults model, you can swap the arms and the heads, you know, they're all interchangeable, so that's really good. So instead, in this section, I'm going to go through which boxes have which fighter types and what minis can represent what fighter types. Yeah, so if you're just starting out and you're looking through the whole Genestealer Cults range on Games Workshop's website, then it can be a bit overwhelming knowing which boxes you need to make a gang. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is the basic box, the Genestealer Cults Neophyte Hybrids box. Comes with 10 dudes. Yeah, this is the basic one. Get one of these and you can legally make an entire gang out of it. You'll be missing some options. You'll be missing, you won't be able to make aberrants, and your some of the weapon options will be a bit limited, but you can basically make an entire gang out of this box. It comes with all of the special weapons on your house gang list. Actually, I tell a lie, I think it doesn't come with a long las, but it comes with most of the special weapons, all of the heavy weapons, and most of the basic weapons you'll need. Again, no actual las guns, but it has shotguns and auto guns. And it comes with some close combat weapons too for the champion. Yeah, so if you're only going to buy one box to make a gang, buy this. This box, the Genestealer Cults Acolyte Hybrids with the multiple armed dudes. This box is probably intended to build Acolyte champions. It has hand flamers, knives, and auto pistols. It also has some more Xenos-y weapons like lash whips, which you could probably run as a shock whip. And it also has all of the heavy rock weapons as well. It also has quite a few extra bits like cool heads and some cool gubbins. If you get this box, you could probably kit bash quite a cool alpha from here as well. Not essential, but you know, if you want to give yourself all the options, then this is one to look at. This is the Genestealer Cults Aberrant box. It has 5 miniatures in it. All of the miniatures in the box are aberrants. This is the box of aberrants. You could potentially use all 5 of them. Yeah, you could take 5 aberrants in a gang if you go aberrant heavy, but you might be better off searching for some of these secondhand, or you know, just do some bit searching on eBay or something. If you just want 1 or 2, buying the whole box might be a waste, but you know, secondhand markets might be your friend. All right, this dude. So this is an Abominant, and he is a character choice in a Warhammer 40,000 army. I'm not sure if he's an elite or I think he's an elite. I don't think he's an HQ choice, but yeah, he's a character type. So he comes in a blister pack by himself, but he also gets the free little familiar guy. So you can leave the familiar, put the familiar on his own base, and you know, use him as a psychic familiar. You could potentially use him as an aberrant if you only need 1 in your gang, but this dude comes on a 40mm base and aberrants are on 32s. So in my opinion, he's a little bit large. But yeah, I think if you wanted to do that, probably people wouldn't complain. Just my tastes, I think he's a bit big. If you do want to use this dude in your gang though, I think he might be really cool to run as an Ogrin or something like that. Run him as a brute. Nice miniature though. Alright, there are a couple of official Magus minis that would work as your adept. This is obviously the coolest one. The Kelemorph, that's the Kelemorph in the middle. The Kelemorph is meant to be played as an alpha with 3 pistols. The Primus, which is this HQ choice, the Primus works as a more generic alpha. So you can see he's got like the sword and he's got like the needle pistol, and I guess that third arm is meant to be like the rend attack. I think that's the idea behind that. But Genestealer Cults have got loads of great character minis, so basically have a look through the character section and use whatever you like. You'll be able to fit them in as whichever character type you want. Yeah, go nuts. It's a really good range. And also, we're not talking about We're not talking about ash wastes here, but of course Genestealer Cults have got vehicles and bikers and stuff like that. So if you are playing an ash wastes campaign, you'll have a lot of cool models to choose from there as well. Alright, on to everybody's favourite part of the video, I assume. It's the example starting gangs. So this is a one-box WYSIWYG gang. The image is a bit small, but if you squint, you might be able to see that says a Neophyte Hybrids box. So this is a gang you can build. What you see is what you get. All options are represented on the model, and everything can be built from just this one box. So we've got an Adept. He's got a chainsword and an auto pistol, a mesh armor, and I've given him the Terrify power. You can swap out the psychic power for any other psychic power you like the look of. I just went with Terrify because why not? But yeah, this list will work with pretty much any psychic power you prefer. And then we've got a champion, Acolyte Hybrid. He's got a mining laser, he's got the third arm, and he's got a hazard suit, giving him the Nerves of Steel skill. Then we've got another Acolyte Hybrid who's got the web gun, hazard suit, and the infiltrate skill. Pretty nasty. Then we've got Neophyte Specialist who's got a grenade launcher, a las pistol, and a hazard suit. And then three Neophytes with autoguns and hazard suits. And just for variety, we've got a Neophyte with a shotgun and a hazard suit. Yeah, so this comes to 1,000 credits total. You're missing aberrants. You don't have any aberrants in this list. But other than that, I think this is a pretty solid list. I think if you wanted to just get started, getting this box and building a list like this would be really, really good. The champions are nice. You know, you got some shooting, you got some infiltrating templates, you got some grenade launchers. The psychic dude leader is really good. Yeah, the only kind of negative about this particular box and this list is that you're running autoguns instead of las guns, but really that's not a big deal. It's slightly worse, but basically fine. Alright, next up, 3 boxes WYSIWYG gang. So this is, if you can have a look at these badly compressed images that I've put up here, this is a Neophyte Hybrids box, and then 1 box of Acolyte Hybrids, so the 3-armed dudes, and then a box of Aberrants. Yeah, so we've got an Adept leader, and that's got the auto pistol, mesh armor, and wall of flame psychic power. And then we've got an Acolyte with a hand flamer and a hazard suit and infiltrate, and then another one with exactly the same. We got a Neophyte Specialist with a grenade launcher and a hazard suit. And then we got 3 aberrants with a combat knife and hazard suits. And then we got 2 basic autogun hazard suit Neophytes. So the idea behind this is you got your Adept and you got a couple of dudes with autoguns kind of at the back. You got your 2 infiltrating hand flamers to kind of go in from the sides and force the enemy to come at you from the middle. The Adept can use his wall of flame power as well to kind of control where the enemy's moving. And the idea is you funnel them in and then you hit them with the brick wall, which is your 3 aberrants. Get them in close, charge with the aberrants, pin them down with the grenade launcher. Yeah. So this is quite an expensive prospect if you want to go out and buy these 3 boxes, obviously. And there will be quite a lot of waste. You'll have a lot of spares though, so plenty of ways to expand the gang. I think it should be quite a fun gang. Aberrants are cool, and you've got some infiltrating champions and stuff like that. And this comes to 995 credits total. Next up, a Kelomorph gang. So you want to run a Kelomorph, and why wouldn't you? Because Kelomorphs are cool. Yeah, this is my list for that. So we've got an Alpha who has 3 pistols, just the basic hazard suit, and the hip shooting skill. Yeah, that's your Kelomorph, that. We've got an Acolyte with a web gun, hazard suit, familiar, and the infiltrate skill. We got another Acolyte with, just for something a bit different, a Blasting Charge, a third arm and a Hazard Suit, and the Infiltrate skill. We got 2 Aberrants with Combat Knives and Hazard Suits. And then we got 3 Neophytes with Las Guns and Hazard Suits. So mostly kept the Hazard Suits because it's an expensive list and we want to keep things cheap. Yeah, the Alpha is relatively cheap, but you can upgrade him with either new pistols if your gang allows you to swap that out, or if you stick with the Las pistols, you can buy hotshot packs for those. I've given the Familiar to the Acolyte with the Web Gun, because he's going to be out by himself with the Infiltrate skill, and he's got a Web Gun, so he's going to be, target priority. So the Familiar will hopefully keep him alive, and then he'll get close and Web Gun people. The Acolyte with no guns, but just the Blasting Charge and the third arm. Basically, the reason for that is because the Acolyte box can build a really cool dude who's just laden down with grenades and explosives. So that's the reason for him. You could, if you want, move some stuff around and buy him like a hand flame or something like that. If you can trim some credits off somewhere. But, Blasting Charge, Infiltration, that's a fun combination. 2 basic Aberrants. Yeah, I didn't mention this before, but Aberrants with a Combat Knife, I think you could probably say, stat-wise, I've bought them a Combat Knife, but miniature-wise, that's just going to represent their big claws. I don't think you need to glue Combat Knives onto all your Aberrants, but, depending on how into WYSIWYG you are, I feel like that's something that you could probably get away with not modelling. And then, yeah, three Neophytes with Las Guns, assuming you can find some Las Gun bits. 995 credits. A bit of a weird one, but it's got some fun, different options that you can play with. I think a Web Gun Champion with a Familiar and Infiltrate will be really unpleasant to get rid of. The Blasting Charge guy might not be very useful, but he should be memorable. And then you've got a solid core of Aberrants and Neophytes to follow follow your Kelomorph up and shoot people with pistols. Then finally, we've got my personal starting gang. So this is the gang that I would play if I was going to start a Genestealer Cult gang. It is not my secret tactics I'm withholding from you. It's not the combination I think is the most powerful or the best. It's basically options that I want to play with combined with miniatures that I own and loadouts that I think are fun. This is basically based on my collection, but yeah, if I was going to be playing a list, then I would bring this list. So we've got an Adept with a Power Maul, a Familiar, Mesh Armor, and Hallucinations. Yeah, Hallucinations is really good and really fun, and I think having a Psychic Leader is really cool, so that's the way I've gone. We got an Acolyte with Hand Flamer, 3 arms, Hazard Suit, and Infiltrate. This is not a great loadout, but I like the model, so he's in that. Then we got an Acolyte with a Mining Laser, 3 arms, a Hazard Suit, and Overwatch. Again, maybe not the optimal loadout, but he's done well for me in the past, and so he makes the cut. We got 2 Aberrants, completely nude, other than their big scary arms. And then we got 3 Neophytes. One of them's got a las gun, one of them's got an auto gun, and the other one also has an auto gun. And that's because those are the miniatures that I have, and those are the miniatures that I want to use. There you go. Right, that comes to 995 credits total. And remember to stay hidden. Yeah, so that's the end of the video. I hope that gave you some insight into how to play Genestealer Cults. If you have experience playing Genestealer Cults and you think that I've got something wrong or I've missed out some really vital piece of Tactica, let me know down below. Thank you for watching to the end of the video. Yeah, channel's growing. Welcome aboard if you've subscribed recently, and thanks for watching, thanks for liking and all that. Yeah, I'll be back soon with more videos. Bye!